boxing truth here. Things are heating up for a potential matchup between Billy Joe Saunders and Danny Jacobs. Very recently, yesterday, both guys were throwing jabs at each other on Twitter. Danny Jacobs, he's been reported to be in discussions for a bout with Andy Lee for sometime in the summer, I believe, for his next fight. And while that's it's not confirmed, or it's been a lot of talk, rumored opponents about Danny Jacobs' next fight. So Jacobs finally came out to social media and stated that there's a lot of talk about his next fight, that nothing's currently official, nothing's set in stone about who his next opponent will be, but he has his sights set on Billy Joe Saunders. He wants Billy Joe Saunders next for his next fight, which is a good, interesting fight if it does happen. I view it as a very close, competitive fight. So Billy Joe Saunders, he's a trash talker. He's a confident individual when it comes to opponents not named Triple G. So he immediately fired back at Jacobs, saying that he'll whip his ass, he would trash him, calling him a fake champion, that he's not a real champion, that he's a second place belt holder, which is true. Danny Jacobs is the regular WBA champion, whatever, but it is a secondary world title. So officially, legitimately, Jacobs has not won a real world title. He's a secondary belt holder. So it's interesting that Jacobs is coming out and stating his intentions on who he would like to fight. Doesn't really usually do that. He never talks about Triple G. He never says his name, never mentions him, never talks about fighting him, because Daddy Al calls the shots in his career. He needs his permission to sign off on who he's going to fight. So Jacobs is talking about a fight with Saunders because Showtime, the network that has showcased him in his last fight, has shown interest in a potential fight with Billy Joe Saunders. And Saunders, he's the complete opposite of Jacobs. He talks trash, talks a lot of shit, says he'll fight Triple G. He had the chance in April, didn't want to take it, was offered a lucrative sum of money for the fight in April. He turned it down. He wanted to get a defense in. He just won the belt, and he didn't want to risk losing his title with a very tough fight in his first defense. So he wanted to get a quick defense in before he decides what's his next move in his career for a potential big fight in the summer, because he has a lot of options on the table. Now, Dan Rafael, the ESPN writer, he wrote a funny-ass story about a potential fight between Jacobs and Saunders. They traded barbs against each other on social media, and he went in on both of these guys. He called them both junior varsity champions, that they're paper champions, that if they do fight, it'll be interesting, but do not let the winner fool the public. He will still be considered a paper champion, as Canelo is still the lineal, and Triple G is regarded as the best middleweight in the world. Now, that was a low blow. He called both of them junior varsity champions. Billy Joe Saunders he's a legitimate champion for the WBO. He beat somebody for that belt. He beat Andy Lee. He beat him fair and square, got the decision. So he's a legit champion because he won a real world title, a full world title. Now Jacobs, I agree, he's a junior varsity champion. Who he beat for that belt? I don't even remember the guy's name. Forgot his name already. Jared Fletcher, my bad. He beat Jared Fletcher for that belt, I believe. but he's mostly been fighting safe opponents. He's been getting good knockout wins. He's been showcasing his power. He's definitely got power in the division. But it wasn't until very recently that he finally took a step-up fight. I mean, Peter Quillen to me is overrated, but a better opponent compared to some of the past opponents he's been fighting. So it's interesting that this fight is perhaps being discussed, but I really question if Team Heyman are going to pull the trigger in this fight. Now, I know Showtime is interested in the fight, but is Heyman interested in this fight? This is a risky fight for Jacobs because Billy Joe Saunders has a difficult style. And I don't think Jacobs has fought a fighter like Saunders before. A southpaw with slickness, speed, footwork. I mean, Dmitry Pirog was the closest to that, and he got knocked out in 5 rounds in his first step-up fight on HBO. So it's a very risky fight if he fights Billy Joe Saunders. It's a very interesting fight if it goes down. But Billy Joe, he's got plenty of options on the table. Bigger money fights. He could opt to fight Triple G if he's serious. After Matt Bursock, he could fight a Chris Eubank Jr. rematch, but he's hesitant in giving him the chance because he really hates Eubank Jr., doesn't like him. Or he could fight Danny Jacobs. Now, which do you think is the most winnable fight? Some people will say Eubank Jr. He beat him before, but it was a very close and competitive fight. Others will say it's Danny Jacobs. And most people say he has no chance against Triple G. But he will probably get the biggest purse of his life if he fights Triple G, especially if it happens in the UK. Now, Billy Joe, he's going off on Twitter. He's talking shit to Dan Rafael, called him a fat boy. That he never spent a day in the gym because Dan Rafael trashed him, called him a paper champ, a junior varsity champ, fighting a fake contender, not a legitimate top 10 contender. And it's true, he's not. He's fighting a guy ranked number 11 in the WBO rankings. And most real boxing fans know that the rankings can be manipulated. A lot of the rating systems in some organizations are very weak. So he's definitely not fighting a legitimate top 10 contender in the middleweight division. That is no doubt. That's Jared Fletcher leftovers he's fighting. But he's talking a lot of shit, Billy Joe Saunders, saying that the offer wasn't really true of what he got for Golovkin, that he was offered short money to come to the United States to fight Triple G, pleading his case of why he turned it down for April, and that he wants Triple G to come to the UK. I agree. I think it will produce more revenue for both fighters if Triple G goes to the UK. I'm sure Triple G will have no problem going to the UK to fight Saunders, if it generates the most revenue for both fighters. But this is going to be interesting. What's going to happen? I can't wait to see what happens in the middleweight division. I want these guys to start fighting each other. If it's not GGG Canelo, GGG Saunders, Jacobs Saunders, Eubank Saunders rematch, it's time to get some clarity in this middleweight division. This is Boxing Truth. I'm out.